Good evening. I'd like to call the Henry Ford College Regular Board of Trustees meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mary Lane here, Roxanne McDonald here, Michael Mead. Here.
Only yours is hot.
Here. Mary Petchlikoff. Here. James Thorpe. Here. Chair Hussein Berry.
Here. Next item, please.
Approval of minutes. Approval of minutes for the following Henry Ford College Board of Trustees meetings. Regular meeting, January 21st, 2020. Closed session, January 21st, 2020. Special meeting, January 25th, 2020. Closed session, January 25th, 2020. Make any necessary corrections and move to approve these minutes.
So, support.
We have a motion and support. Are there any corrections? Trustee Lane?
Yes, as usual. Sorry.
No surprise.
On page 3, it sounds a little weird.
Which one?
Page 3, yes, of the regular meeting of January 21st. So I was really, the sentence says, Trustee Lane asked if an increase in enrollment results in an increase in faculty salaries. And then below that, there's some, President Cavalluna talks about the number of staff. So I was really asking whether there was an increase in sections and staff members.
That's what I understood.
And consequently, that would be salaries as well. So that was one thing. And then the second thing that I had on page 5, Trustee Lane mentioned that U of M Dearborn has a link to an alumni newsletter. We were sent a link to an article in their alumni newspaper, and it featured an alum of this college as well. And then that jarred me to think of, to ask about an alumni newspaper here. So, minor corrections, but, and finally on page 6, so I asked about efforts to make headway, and it says on there, with the GR promise, and what I meant was like the Grand Rapids. I don't care if they make progress, that's their business. What I care about is if we can do something similar, and it's Grand Rapids Community College promise specifically. So, and then one other thing on the meeting of January 25th closed, the January 25th special meeting notes that Trustee McDonald came in.
I already called it.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to get these to you, but she was absent, or I guess you could remark that Ms. DeLong updated her afterwards, whichever way everyone prefers, but those were things that I saw.
Any others? Any discussion? We have a motion and support. Are there any objections? Hearing none, please attach a vote in the affirmative, please. Next item.
Recognition and acknowledgments.
Thank you, President Cavalluna, Chair Berry, and members of the board. My name is Abby Begley. I graduated from Monroe High School in 2018 and am now a sophomore at HFC, majoring in business administration. I'm also a member of the Lady Hawks softball team. Last year, I earned NJCAA All-Academic Second Team for Academic Excellence with a grade point average of 3.95. I also earned academic All-MCCAA Hawks Academic Team Honors and was voted Honorable Mention All-Conference for my play as shortstop. I have accepted a scholarship to Concordia University for the fall 2020 semester, where I plan to continue my studies and to play the sport that I love. While I'm excited to help lead Concordia to another College World Series appearance, I'm most looking forward to helping my Lady Hawks softball team dominate our conference opponents this season and earn a berth to the NJCAA District Tournament in Sandusky, Ohio. Now, I am pleased to read this month's HFC Board Acknowledgments. Congratulations to the HFC wrestling team for winning the MCCAA Wrestling Championship on January 25th in Muskegon, Michigan. In addition to earning the state title, the following grapplers earned all MCCAA honors and champions of their respective weight classes. Dante Rivera, 125 pounds. Asil Amatala, 133 pounds. Elijah Kidder, 149 pounds. Dean Elder, 184 pounds. Congratulations also to head coach Grant McKenzie, who was voted MCCAA Coach of the Year, and to Dante Rivera, who was voted MCCAA Freshman of the Year. The nursing department has once again surpassed the national NCLEX RN first-time pass rates for associate's and bachelor's degree programs with a 92.4% pass rate. Congratulations to the nursing faculty and staff. The Student Nurse Association won the following awards from the Michigan Student Nurses Association at the state competition: the Community Service Award, Creative Newsletter, Fundraising, and Creative Scrapbook. Additionally, SNA Faculty Advisor Kathy Gangarosa was awarded the Distinguished Faculty Advisor Award. Congratulations to the SNA and Kathy Gangarosa. Honor student Yasmin Berry won the Johns Hopkins University's first annual Richard Maxie National Undergraduate Humanities Research Symposium Scholarship. This is a new annual 2-day event that offers students across the country the chance to disseminate their humanities research on a national scale. The School of Health and Human Services is participating in the All of Us research project in collaboration with the National Institute of Health and Beaumont Health. The All of Us project is designed to improve healthcare by building a diverse database. Pre-education alumna Jennifer M. Olivia recently received a PhD in special education from the University of Kansas. Jennifer faced many obstacles as a student at HFC, yet persevered. Congratulations, Dr. Amabilia. Thank you for the opportunity to be this month's reader. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
Ms. Begley, you're from Monroe.
Yes.
What brought you to Henry Ford College?
Softball, because Monroe's College does not have a team.
Okay. And you brought along with you your 3.95 grade point average.
Yes.
While playing softball. So you've had a lot of A's.
Yes.
And all those A's, who was your best or most challenging and most enjoyable, and it could be all three of those things, instructor?
My accounting professor was very helpful with my softball schedule, having to leave class early, sometimes miss class, all like in general for games. It was Professor Vatruba. He was that, and then that's probably like, of all those three things, he was all of them.
So with that 3.95 and your skills and probably the toughest place to play in the center of the infield, where are you headed after Henry Ford College?
Concordia.
Concordia? What are you going to do after that?
I'm not sure yet.
All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Ms. Begley, congratulations on your success. Thank you for presenting tonight. And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
President's items.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Trustees, I want to point out to you number 4 on the acknowledgement items that Ms. Begley just read. You'll see that relates to honor student Yasmin Berry, and I hope you all recall Ms. Berry, who was literally in the same area where Ms. Begley was. I think Ms. Berry presented to you all last month, so that's a really nice thing to be able to have someone present to you as a student, and then the month after that have another student tell you how great that previous presenter was. I also want to bring your attention to something that was on social media recently that is another testament to our students making a difference in the community, and the headline is Dearborn Heights Police Officer Ayub honored for saving life of toddler found face down in a pond. And of course, our former student, Mehdi Ayub, is a police officer in Dearborn Heights, and if you haven't seen this already, it's a really fascinating and wonderful story in that our former student, Officer Ayub, was called to the scene of an area where a child was found face down in a koi pond, and Officer Ayub grabbed the child, and essentially resuscitated the child, and then worked with other law enforcement and medical services to get the child to the the Detroit Children's Hospital, and literally saved the life. So when I tell you what kind of difference we can make in the world here at Henry Ford College, there's probably no better example than a student saving another person's life. I also want to address Trustee Lane's question about the Grand Rapids Community College announcement of the Promise Zone there. I actually spoke with Governor Whitmer's policy director on the College Promise Network, and some of you may recall, I believe it was sometime last year, Dr. Yosef Mosalem addressed this board, and I think it was when you all were serving on the school board, about his work with the state of Michigan asking for a place on the list of communities that are seeking to be identified as promise zones. And in my conversations last week with the governor's staff, the question was put to me about whether and if we still wanted to be considered, and I said we were, and then I'll be interacting with Dr. Maleko on that question. So the question is not done yet, Trustee Lane, and it is ongoing. There's a limited number of slots of communities that can have promise zones, and we had asked to be on that list. And the list is in flux, is about the most I can give you there, but it's not a dead letter yet, Trustee Lane.
Do you know why there's a limited number?
The legislation authorizing the tax capture limited it that way, and that's the best I can give you there.
I just ask because I see more and more in the ACCT, other colleges that are doing it, so naturally I'm, envious and thinking, why can't we have it?
I tend to agree with you, and we're working on it.
Thank you.
Trustee Petrikov?
Just to tag on to that question then, do they do a selection by lottery if there's a lot of submission, if they have a limited number, or how do they?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that we are not on the list yet. We are asking to be on the list, and I'll just say this, that there are communities above us on the list that I'm asking the administration to consider changing the list. I'd like to address some of the questions that the board has been presenting to the administration as recently as in January. I got the impression that some of the board would benefit from a listing of what questions the board has been presenting to the administration and what outcomes we have on that. And so in my monthly report to you all, I listed those, and I'll continue to do that. But I also noted something that I want you and frankly the college community to be aware of, that we as a cabinet are contemplating and will be over the next 6 to 12 months reviewing how we collect information as a college and how we make it available to our stakeholders. And of course, you all being probably the apex of the stakeholder community, I hope to be able to develop a process whereby your requests for information of the administration are clear and recorded, and then you can access the answers that we provide in real time. That is something that I think is doable and we're working on. But also, our plan is to take that, hopefully, and replicate it for a number of different places that retain data in our college, such that stakeholders, like a collective bargaining unit's president, asking for information on the history of the collective bargaining unit, or an employee asking for information about an investigation with the HR department. Of course, there would have to be necessary limitations to that information, but our college needs to get more sophisticated in the collection of data, and we're working on that as a cabinet. Until then, you'll see my recitation to you of all the information you've requested in the reports in the format you saw in my report for February, and if you'd like me to amend that or change it, I'm open to feedback as always. I want to address a couple things that I am proud about that this college has taken on over the last, well, the last time we met was the very end of January, so in the last couple weeks. Some of you attended our student engagement conference, which was also the Social Venture Challenge, and I was excited to see some of you there. I saw Trustee Mead and Trustee Petlichkoff and Trustee Mosip and Trustee McDonald, and I don't think I missed anybody else, did I? It was an exciting event, two-day event. We had the honor of having Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson address a nearly full FORFA auditorium on the importance of voting. We also had a panel the next day that had State Representative Abdullah Hammoud and Wayne County Commissioner Sam Beydoun, and we had Dearborn Councilwoman Leslie Herrick attend, and of course students were all throughout our building here learning and hearing about the importance and the value and the power of voting. And then in the atrium right outside this room, we had a social venture challenge, which was the first time we brought this to campus, and it essentially was Shark Tank for people who are in college, whatever their age, people who are in college that identified social issues or social problems and had ideas about how to solve them. And the Resolution Project is a nonprofit emanating from New York that was founded by a friend of mine that runs these resolution projects in community colleges and universities throughout, frankly, multiple countries. And through a two-day process, any of these social entrepreneurs that have a pitch that makes sense, the Resolution Project picks them, gives them seed funding for their project, and then also helps them with social entrepreneur support as a mentor throughout. It was a wild success. When I talked to my friend who wanted to bring this to our campus, I was frankly concerned we wouldn't have enough competitors. And we had, I think what they said was 15 submissions. And I think 4 got through and got funded and supported. And it drew the likes of the Ford Fund to come watch this. It was, if you were here and you saw it, Trustee Mosip saw it, I know Trustee McDonald, it was, you could feel the energy in this atrium here, and it was exciting. And the co-founders of that project were very, very happy, and they've committed to coming back next year. So next year we hope to enhance that more. And I hope what Henry Ford College is seen as is a place and a hub for innovation for many things, but certainly social entrepreneurs. So that was an exciting part of the day. And I think you all know that this conference has gone on for nearly every year for the last 15 years. And the real heart and soul of that is Dr. Tony Perry. I don't see Dr. Perry here today. And I don't see President McDonald or Vice President Rader, but they've been supportive of him for many, many years, and it's a good program. If you've ever met Dr. Tony Perry, you know he's the Energizer Bunny. He was literally running all over this campus, setting up meaningful opportunities for our students and the many students who travel from other campuses to come here, from U of M Dearborn, U of M Ann Arbor, Oakland University, Schoolcraft College, Wayne County Community College District, to get involved and see the value of social entrepreneurism and social engagement. It's a great program that Tony Perry is completely responsible for. He kind of props me up on stage and I talk for a few minutes, but he's the one doing all the work. In addition to him, he's got 2 really good helpers that are Robert Yarmarter and Eric Rader. So I want it to be clear that that's such a wonderful program that my colleagues, Dr. Perry, Robert Yarmarter, and Eric Rader. And Dr. Nealon, am I missing anyone else that deserves credit for that?
I'm sure we will.
Well, you deserve credit.
But they really did an amazing job.
We as a board, we met in an open session during a board retreat in this room at the end of January, and I want to thank all of you for giving some of your time on a Saturday. This was the second retreat we've done in January, and I'm happy to report that we were not snowed in here like we were the first year. And I'm also happy to report that I hope you've got a lot of value out of it. I found a lot of value in it, and I was immensely impressed by my colleagues on the cabinet who made presentations during that open board meeting. And of course, you know who they are, but I think it's worth noting when our attendance is a little higher, as it is tonight, that Dr. Herbst led a team that was evaluating the campus safety structure, and Rhonda DeLong was an able support of that in the presentation. That was fantastic, and I hope you felt was useful on evaluating what our campus safety structure is and whether it should be changed or not. And I should report to you all that while that was in closed session because of the sensitive nature, we are moving forward on the things that the board directed for further analysis on that. And of course, those of you who are in the community, I will report out to you if we make changes, and I frankly will report out to you if we don't make changes, why we wouldn't make changes. But that ball is still rolling. I also want to compliment Dr.
Before you go on?
Yes.
That is also on the agenda for the City Relations Committee that's meeting next week. So President Cavaloon, I hope that either you or Dr. Herbst will be there to give at least a general overview of it.
Absolutely. I plan to be in attendance, and I frankly haven't talked with Dr. Herbst about it, but I will.
Whomever.
The other presentation that you got that I was quite proud of was by Drs. Nealon and Gonko, and they were talking about strategic planning. That was in open session, and we are excited to have both of those individuals head up our strategic planning process. Chair Barry, of course, appointed Trustee Dr. Mead to help them in the analysis of the strategic plan, and that process will go forward. I finally, at that retreat, outlined the key performance indicators for each vice president. I'm excited about those and the process we are in them, and of course, the goal there is to show you and anyone else who cares about the college what the vice presidents have identified as their most important tasks, and I invite anyone who cares about the college to talk about any of the vice presidents to learn about that. I want to switch and tell you about my wonderful day at the end of January in East Campus. I spent a day in the nursing building and also in the MTech, and I sent you all around a photograph that I like very much, and it was a wonderful time there with the dean and the associate dean, Susan Schunkweiler and Debbie Szymanski. And one of the things I really liked that I showed you all was a picture of two students that are in the nursing program, Lashia Jacobs and Emily Plaza, who literally took a break from one of their tests to take a picture with me. And I'm glad to say that I didn't ruin the test. They both passed. But it was too long for me to get out to spend I'd been there several times, but I hadn't spent a full work day there. And for those of you who do work at those two campuses, Kathy Demetrio has promised she's going to help me with the difficult task of scheduling time for me to be there at least once a semester, and I plan to do that because it was enjoyable. And Dr. Schunkweiler, I appreciate your hospitality while I was there. The next item I want to talk to you about is a thing I reported out to the board, but to my friends who are in the SSA, and I saw several of my friends in the SSA. I think I saw at least 2 or 3 vice presidents of the SSA, which is the Support Staff Association. Your president, I don't see President Kyer today, but your president gave me a list of what I counted as 48 incidents of your volunteerism in the community and around Henry Ford College, and I reported them directly to the Board of Trustees. I want to say thank you to you all for the donation of your time and your activities in the community and your partnership with me. I appreciate and respect all of you individually and, of course, as a collective bargaining unit. Finally, although not finally, I'm almost done. Mr. Chairman, last week I was in Washington with Trustee Mosip at the Association of Community College Trustees National Legislative Summit, and a couple important meetings took place there. Of course, I gave you all documents from the AACCT and the legislative advocacy that they were pushing for, and I'll go through that in a minute. But we, Trustee Mosip and I, enjoyed a meeting that he was able to organize with the ambassador to the United States from the country of Yemen, and asked him for opportunities to have individuals from Yemen who are interested in pursuing higher education evaluate Henry Ford College because of our community being welcoming to them and our education being second to none. I also was happy to meet with Senators Stabenow and Peters individually. I shouldn't say individually, but at a time with Senator Peters and then at a time with Senator Stabenow, with other community college trustees and presidents in the later part of the week. And I'm sure that Trustee Mosip would have been there, but he had something to do on that Monday night that I think you all know what was. It was the school board meeting. I was also surprised and excited to hear Lamar Alexander, who's the senior senator from Tennessee, and frankly the fulcrum from which the higher education authorization in the federal government rotates. And he has expressed, and I think he's right, that he's going to get some legislation passed, hopefully. I know this is an election year, but he seems to think that there's bipartisan consensus for a simplification of the FAFSA application to reduce the number of questions down into the mid-20s. And my hope is that that will significantly reduce what many of you know, but I know Trustee Mosop has brought up in public and in individual conversations with me, the really difficult thing of validation questions and verification questions that the United States Congress recognizes need to be changed. The other thing that the ACCT has been pushing on, and I pushed on also, is we should increase the amount that individual students can get under Pell, and we should allow Pell to be eligible for things that are what are called short-term programs. I think that that's got legs. It looks like it does, and my hope is that Senator Alexander can do what he says, which is that he supports it, and of course he is a Republican. He was the Secretary of Education under a Republican president and a former governor of Tennessee, and so my point is he's not one that said that lightly, and I'm hopeful that he'll be able to accomplish that. I was also honored by ACCT to speak on a panel about legislative advocacy, and I represented Henry Ford College as the best college on the planet, which didn't win me a lot of friends there, but it's the truth, and I'll say it whenever I can, and I know that the board has asked me to do that, and I'll continue to do that. Finally, many of my colleagues in the audience here today are interested in what the outcome will be of the Higher Learning Commission's visit to the campus, and the board is aware of the outcome of that, and that is because I've sent it to them. I will be circulating an announcement about the results of that hopefully later this week. Dr. Gonko is working with me on that, but I will tell you, my colleagues, that the Higher Learning Commission has reaccredited us. There's a couple places where they've asked us to report back to them on how we're improving a few places, but there's more good news than even kind of bad news in that report. I know you've been patient with my administration in getting that information out, and of course we will give you the full report. You should know that the reason it's taken for a while is they gave us a draft report, we made some comments on it, and then they gave us a final report that I'll be circulating to you all in the community very, very soon. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I went longer than I usually do.
You're fine.
But if I see Trustee Lane has any questions, I am, despite popular belief, I am finished.
Trustee Lane.
You mentioned short-term programs, and that prods me to wonder whether you're talking about, so Pell Grants and other federal aid being available for certificate-type programs? Because another thing that's also in the literature lately, and I'm not raising this as a question, I almost feel like I don't want to ask a question because it'll go on the list of questions that are asked. So I'm just throwing it out for reflection rather than a specific answer, but are these the type of certificate programs that we have already, or are they envisioning something else? Have we thought about, do we have adequate certificate programs, or should we be thinking of more 8-week programs rather than the traditional 16-week term?
They are, when a federal legislator says the phrase short-term Pell, they are talking about, and again, this is only at the proposal level. It's never been accomplished as of yet, but
Yeah.
the proposals and the people advocating for these proposals, Trustee Lane, when they use the phrase short-term Pell, they are saying programs less than a degree and some and most certificates or less. We do have those programs here, but the thing I'm most excited about is that with this increased funding, we will be able to take the kind of engagement that Drs. Nealon and Chapman have already done and go to the industry and say, what certificate programs do we not already have that you think are useful, that can benefit the population that benefits from Pell? And of course, Pell is generally supportive of people with family incomes of $20,000 or less. So, and right on the heels of Governor Whitmer's plan to offer free college tuition at community colleges like ours for people 25 and older, this could be a real double whammy of ways to help some of the most in need of what we offer. And of course, we will try to produce the programs, and that part of Dr. Nealon's and his team's process is pretty nimble. And so, Trustee Lane, we do have those programs. If there are programs out there that can deliver 8-week programs with Pell support that don't exist now, the team is, I've seen them move pretty quickly.
Trustee Moser?
Yeah, if I can also speak to that, Trustee Lane, when I was there at the conference, they were talking about R1's universities that are totally opposed to this, unfortunately. This is where the education community is kind of not helping each other. And they're opposed to this because they know that beneficiaries will be community colleges where they offer these kind of short-term programs. And unfortunately, right now, if you want to apply for a Pell Grant, it's for the entire year. So you have to be enrolled for the entire, for both semesters, for fall and winter. And this would be amazing for our students who are either in the workforce and they're coming to take a certificate, or they're coming back to take their associates. And it would tremendously help.
Or people who can't envision themselves yet with an associate's, and maybe are overwhelmed by
Right.
that, but maybe could be lured into an 8-week certificate and then gain confidence to tackle an associate's.
Absolutely, yeah. But
Trustee Petch?
hopefully it will get passed despite the opposition from the big guys. So.
Trustee
I
Petchkoff?
just read an article today, and I don't know how valid it is, didn't vet it, but it was a comparison of a 4-year college degree versus what the job at the other end actually pays on an annual basis, and whether those degrees have that kind of return of value. And quite frankly, a lot of them were talking about that a lot of these degrees could be more geared towards either an associate's degree or a certification program, as opposed to having to go through and pursue a 4-year. So I can see where the 4-year universities might be fearful that with more monies available, that the business community might be willing to take something other than a 4-year degree in order, because a lot of these jobs don't really necessarily need that 4-year degree in order to pursue that, and they don't give a return and have the value for spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're getting $40,000 a year job out of it. So, I think we need to really look at, when we go to the ballot box, about how people are approaching the dynamics of our work environment and what we really want to pursue to support.
Dr. Mead, do you have a question or comment?
No.
Are there any other questions? I thought you raised your hand. Yeah. We have no other questions. We'll go to the next item, please.
Okay, special reports, Higher Learning Commission Assessment Academy, 2015-2019, Board Report 4545, Vice President Nealon.
Thank you, trustees and President Cabaluna. The report that was referenced just a few minutes ago from the Higher Learning Commission will do a splendid job of recognizing the work that this college does in assessing student learning outcomes. That's not by accident. That's through the work not only of many, many dedicated faculty members, but 4 specific individuals who serve as co-chairs of a committee for the assessment of student learning, or what we call CASEL. They also came together with several other folks from around the college and became representatives for the college at an HLC Roundtable Academy on assessment. And their recognition for that work has earned them a visit to Chicago, where they can share their best practices with other colleges across the nation, because we were recognized for the tremendous amount of work that they've done. So I'm going to turn this over to them, just give you an overview of what it was that we've succeeded in doing. I was going to announce them in the fashion of our young lady who started by giving you their weight classes as well, but I suspect that I'll rue the day if I actually take that on. So I'm just going to turn this over to the team.
Weighing in at 125.
So how do I follow that? So Ruth Haller is passing out a document that we used at the Impact Conference back in October, which was well received. And as you can see, it itemizes a lot of the accomplishments that we worked through the last 4 years. And certainly I don't have time to talk about that, but you have that information. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. I'd also like to thank you for supporting this. When we received the 2015 reaccreditation commentary, it was noted that we weren't doing the job and assessment that we needed to be doing. And so we talked about joining the Higher Learning Commission Assessment Academy, and because you were willing to fund us, we were able to do that. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Dr. Nealon for his continued support.
195 pounds.
Not me. Like 95 pounds. For his continued support and clearly his humor in working with us. The Assessment Academy was a 4-year commitment. And we had representatives, I'm not going to read names, but we had representatives from every school at the college, and also Cassandra Fluker, who works with student services. The importance of having this broad representation was that everyone was familiar with the different kinds of work that is done in the different schools. The work in nursing is different than the work in communications. The work in the trade and apprentice or the career services is different than the work in math or science. And so we needed this broad representation of people who knew that kind of work so that they could relate with different people who are now being asked to do this new kind of assessment. When we started the project, we thought that we needed to be able to communicate better between CASEL and faculty. But we learned, as we adopted a new way of doing assessment, we had to do more. We didn't have to just improve communication, we had to change the culture. Our old culture of assessment was looking at what teachers were teaching and seeing, could students do well on a test? Rather, we wanted to look at what were students doing well, whether they were doing a project, whether they were writing a paper, whether they were taking a test, and look at what students were learning, their strengths and their weaknesses. Look at the weaknesses and say, how can we as instructors help them do this better? So now our focus wasn't about what teachers were doing. It was, how can we use this information to serve students better? Getting my thought. So Dr. Nealon already shared with you that we have been invited to participate in a poster session at the April Higher Learning Commission session, and also participate in a panel of 4 community colleges who are going to share their best practices. Most recently, as in yesterday, I was asked if Higher Learning Commission could share my contact information, in that my phone number and email address, so that other colleges and universities could contact us and we could be kind of coaching them in their new initiatives. With that, I've kind of glossed over what we've done. Cindy's going to talk about some of the responses that we received from our mentor and our scholar, and also to talk about what we're going to be doing. Because the academy is over, doesn't mean that our work is over. We've learned a lot, but we're going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to help faculty assess for the purpose of student learning.
Again, thank you for having us here. Where are we at? As you can see, we did this whole project, and part of the part of the whole Academy Roundtable was that we had a mentor and a scholar that came from Higher Learning Commission themselves and from other institutions that have gone through this process and have been successful in doing assessment work and improving student learning. So these are just some of the comments that we got back near the end when we submitted our impact report after several meetings in face-to-face and over the phone and things with our mentor and scholar. In fact, our scholar, Susan Murphy, actually came and presented one of our mini conferences to all the faculty here because she works for Higher Learning Commission. So you can read some of these comments were from Dr. Ranfin Lee, who comes out of Chicago, who was learning with us. And then these were a few of the comments that Dr. Susan Murphy talked about as they saw us mature and grow over 4 years. So they were really positive that sometimes you kind of are working so much on it yourself you don't see the changes as we would write our reports over the 4 years. They were really able to see that as they probed and asked questions. We really appreciated their help throughout this whole process. It was really important to have people that have been through it and people that are kind of at the front end of leading assessment throughout across the nation at both universities and community colleges. This is kind of the summary. So what we did, we accomplished a lot of things. Deb talked about, and she's presented you with a lot of the initiatives that we took to try and grow the culture of assessment, not only with faculty and staff, but with students as well. So as you can see, we now have, and I think you actually have access to it, I'm not sure about that, as board members. On our curriculum and catalog website, we now have a whole assessment so that all the assessments that are done on both program learning outcomes, co-curricular learning outcomes, and institutional learning outcomes are there. So you can see the growth and what projects different people have created to improve student learning at all of those different levels. We're going to move forward and start to also have course learning outcomes and course assessments available in there as well. So now it's much more transparent, it's much more consistent. Everybody's using a very simple, we adopted a 3-step process, and there's ongoing reporting cycles. They do vary depending on the nature of whether it's a program learning outcome or an institutional level learning outcome. They're all now measurable learning outcomes. People have rewritten them over these past 4 or 5 years. So really the biggest thing that we saw, and this is really shifting the culture, was the perception of what assessment is. Assessment, as Deb kind of talked about, was kind of that culture of it's about what I teach. Really, it's not. It's only as good as what students learn. So it's really about the student learning, and we've kind of shifted that. In fact, we had one of our math faculty who at one point said, "Oh, I get it. It's not about me. It's for me." So it's really information that he gathers. So it doesn't become confrontational or anything. It's really to learn and grow as instructors so our students can learn and grow. So what we saw is there's an openness to assessment. There's much more of a focus on the student learning, not on the teaching. And that's really what the big shift was about. And that looking at student learning not from just a test perspective, but on projects, assignments, and all kinds of different learning activities that demonstrate student success and their awareness at, again, institutional and program level outcomes. And that we actually hear people in hallways talking about assessment. That was huge. Deb and I get a little too excited. Ruth and Karen get a little too excited when people say, "Hey, I used my assessment data," and we're like, "Oh, okay, contain it." So that's because we're a little bit of assessment nerds, so it's okay. So what we've done now is we need to go forward and change the future. We need to keep this process going and continue forward so that we get better and better. We found at a lot of the conferences we went to, we really are leading. The one area that we are ahead of a lot of other schools, universities and community colleges, is our co-curricular activities and assessing the learning that happens in clubs, in groups, in student government, and all of those different areas. I can't say enough about how awesome our faculty and staff in those areas have been in embracing this and writing outcomes and measuring them and really developing projects to enhance the learning that happens there, to reinforce the learning that's happening in a classroom, because we all know it happens all over campus, not just in the classrooms. So we've decided we have to really move forward. So we're going to gather some data on how people feel about assessment, where they think it is, faculty, staff, and students. Reflect on our process, see where we might need to modify to make it simpler and easier and better and more robust. To strengthen and move it forward in the future, to really, again, the focus is on improving student learning, because it's what we're all here for. So again, We want to thank you for your time and continuing support as we continue to work forward and move toward assessment to build, well, President Kevin said we're the best in the world, but we still want to be better. So we're going to continue to make our programs even stronger. What was it?
The best in the solar system.
Oh, in the solar system, sorry.
No, we're not there yet.
We're
just
working on it.
Yes.
So if we can continue student success, then we'll achieve best in the solar system. And we're open to any questions.
Yes, thank you. Trustee Petrikov?
I'm looking at the little blurb here, and I'm glad you filled in what ILO and everything else means
yes.
now. So I'm going, okay, what's this?
You might have noticed the posters all over campus on institutional learning outcomes.
Well, now I'm
look for
going
them.
to pay attention. So that's kind of one of my questions, actually, kind of segues into this. I see on here involvement of the adjunct faculty has seen significant increase. One of my questions is that, and something we've always kind of had concerns about, is that when you have incoming and outgoing adjuncts that may not know, haven't been on a campus or taught here for a long time, come and go from other community colleges or other institutions, how do we instruct and inform and keep them relevant with all of these changes? Because this change is a big, I like the idea that it's not about what I'm teaching you, did you get it, but about the feedback of what have you learned. But how are we incorporating this with the staff who has to really understand this and get it and work with it?
Well, we've done a few things, and I'm going to let Deb talk to some examples she might have coming out of the math and science area and how we've reached out to adjuncts to really have them part of the process.
So in math and science, we have a semester kickoff every August, and everyone is invited, full-time and part-time faculty. We sit together in curriculum groups and we talk about what are the major ideas that we're going to be addressing in this particular curriculum. How are we approaching assessment? Nala Haydar, who leads the quantitative literacy institutional learning outcome, she and I met with instructors, part-time instructors who were teaching at night, and we said, we're going to be doing this. We need to find out what are our students learning and where are the shortcomings, because we want to address every student's needs. And we got really good feedback from the part-time instructors. We were choosing, so I'm going to talk about college algebra, and in college algebra, the instructors, the full-time instructors, identified certain skills that are important for students to know so they can be successful in the next course. And so they were going to assess student learning of those particular skills. So we talked to a number of part-time instructors, and they said, well, okay, and I know I do that, but can you give me more guidance? And so we wrote questions, specific questions, and said, if you could give, it doesn't have to be these questions, but questions like this that capture these skills. Okay, so that was okay. But then they go, well, I don't know how to assess it. And so we wrote specific rubrics. So for this particular skill, if a student can do this, they're at the introductory level. If they can do this, then they're moving along, they're developing. And if they can do this, then they're at competence. So the guidance that we were giving people wasn't that the full-time instructors were telling people what to do. We were responding to their request for guidance. So does that capture how we are including?
I'm just wondering, how much participation do you get from the, if you have 300 or 400 part-time people, are you only getting a third of them who are asking these questions kind of thing? And so the rest are kind of not participating in the same.
I don't know that they're not participating because we are gathering information and they're providing
okay, that's
data.
what I want to know is there some responsibility, accountability for follow-through of how we are achieving the outcomes that you're seeing?
I'm a program lead in interior design, and in my area, in my program alone, I'm the only full-time faculty. So I have to rely on all the other teachers in my program are adjuncts. And so what I've done to sort of encourage the information and for us to build the program together is that we meet each semester at the beginning of the semester and talk about what the program learning outcome is we're going to be assessing. And then I ask them to please, we talk about what kind of a assignment or idea we could look at and see where the students are weakest or strongest, because it's we build on our program. In the very beginning, it's the lower end skills. At the end, then they have to pull it all together. If I'm noticing something, as I teach the higher developed comprehensive projects, if I see that there's some skill that's a problem, then we go back and I talk with the other faculty and say, what do you think about the reason we're having trouble with drafting? What do you think is the problem why I can't get the space planning the way I want? And we sit down together and say, maybe we could try this. And so I'm getting feedback from them all the time. And each semester, yes, they're all participating. Not every semester do we do the same skills, but each semester we are talking about, and I'm needing their feedback because there's no way I could do it without their help. So I think it is a lot more information than what you're getting. I might be the one doing the reporting, but I'm getting all kinds of information from the adjuncts and their help. And then we give feedback to them, too, as to whether it's working or not.
Okay, thank you.
And we've also reached out to the union president of the FO and to ask her for help in reaching more of our adjunct faculty. And we send out emails that don't just go to full-time faculty on how to integrate the institutional learning outcomes in every course.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, I really appreciate the shift from teaching to student learning. I think that makes a lot of sense. And you've kind of touched on what my question is when you talked about the different skill levels. But more specifically, my thought is, how do you take into consideration how different students learn differently, or is that taken into consideration?
Actually, that was one of the drivers behind not just using written tests as our only tool of assessment, because we know that some students do demonstrations, do a presentation. That's really where their strengths lie, and they can demonstrate that I know something that way, or writing a paper, although most of them will tell you that's not their favorite, or doing a group project, or doing, in the case of like things like interior design, actually developing a whole project that talks about verbal communication, that talks about using spreadsheets and all of our technology. It can address many areas in very different ways than strictly doing it based on a test or a quiz. So that is one of the reasons that we went to the model of not using just exams.
Trustee Dr. Mead?
How does this impact the development of syllabi? Are syllabi different now because of this emphasis? Is there more included, or is it still the same?
Well, every syllabus will state the course learning outcomes, but the work that has been done behind the scenes is that those course learning outcomes are actually mapped across an entire program. And so if you have a skill like quantitative reasoning, and you're in this, let's say you're in accounting, you may be able to identify the fact that students take college algebra in their first or second semester. But we can identify the fact that they're applying their math skills in this accounting class, and they're mastering it over here. In fact, one of my favorite tales was happened here in Castle when one of the accounting teachers said, we're having a 50% dropout rate, and we think it's because the students can't do math. But we have a math class as a prerequisite. We had a chance to look at it, and we found out that it was actually not the appropriate math class. And so this kind of work has brought people together from across the campus. The sad news was I had to explain to people that they learned how to do square roots for nothing. But on the other hand, they are probably doing better with your tax returns this year than ever before.
So if a student reads the syllabus ahead of time, do they actually understand what kind of learning objectives they are required to accomplish?
They're actually stated as the student who successfully completes this class will be able to do, and then the list extends there.
All right, then the assessments. Dr. Zoff, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Trustee Mead. There's another part to this story, and that is Cindy talked about this ILO idea, right? Making students aware of what are learning outcomes. When we do a project in my math class, and my students have to write a journal on this math project, they're, what am I writing in math class for? And I point to the ILO poster and I say, because when you leave Henry Ford College,
It's okay. We are a community college.
we are a community. We are a community. We expect that you can write across the curriculum. When you leave Henry Ford, you can write, and I do most of my teaching in the math for elementary teachers. Okay, as a pre-service teacher, you can write not just mathematics, but you've honed your skills that you learned in English 131 and 132, and you've developed them to write in your Ed Psych course, to write in your Introduction to Education course. And so those fundamental writing skills are developed to the profession of of teaching. Just like in engineering, right? Our students learn their basic English writing skills in English 131 and 132, but throughout their engineering courses, they're developing those skills and they're honing them to write like an engineer. Because engineers and educators don't write the same, just like attorneys and philosophers don't write the same. And so the real goal or the real benefit in having institutional learning outcomes isn't to say that I took English 132, check, I'm done. But I'm developing this skill throughout my career here at Henry Ford so that I'm well prepared when I go to a 4-year school or I go out into the workplace. I'm going to back up just half a step, and that is making students aware of what learning outcomes are helps them become participants in their learning. We know that people who are metacognitive, so cognition is I know, metacognition is I know that I know. And so if students know what is expected through their outcomes, and they know that they know, oh yeah, okay, I learned that here, then they're going to be more robust learners, and they're going to capture and hold on to that learning throughout their careers.
Thank you.
Trustee Moser?
Yeah. Quick question just on the professional development. Whenever, as Trustee Pleskov mentioned, that we have a substantial number of adjunct faculty. So when they get on board, do they get a mentor that teaches them about ILO or guides them through, since this is venturing something new?
Well, we haven't specifically assigned mentors for learning outcomes, but I don't know that it's a bad idea. We have offered professional development for the whole campus, and many of our adjuncts have come to our mini conferences. We've met with a lot of adjunct faculty as part of programs to help them develop the outcomes for their program and how that ties into the institutional outcomes throughout every program on campus. And I can, for the most part, I don't know there's any programs that have no adjunct faculty in them. So that's always engaging there. But yeah, I mean, we have representatives on all of the CASEL committees. In fact, we've had more and more people volunteer, which is, over the years that Deb and I have been doing it, that's kind of a little miracle. One, they all show up, and now we have 2 adjuncts on each of the committees that want to be there and are really, really participating a lot in spreading the word.
Trustee McDonald, do you have a question?
No, I just want to say something. What was just stated a minute ago about how things are linked throughout, that makes so much sense to me, because I remember when I was in college, as I went through, it came a point I was sitting in a class and it just hit me. All of this stuff really links together. And it was like a light bulb went off. And I've talked to other students that never had that moment. And that moment it helped me just link everything together and understand why I'm here, what I'm learning, and how it all, combines. And so I think this is giving them the chance to understand this because a lot of times they just wouldn't capture that. They wouldn't know that. So I think it makes a lot of sense in learning.
I invite you all to stop and read a poster on the way out, because it really does tie institutional learning outcomes to why the student needs to write well or communicate effectively. So yeah, we put it in really terms that students know why it's important.
Good.
So If you see any posters, read them as you pass by.
This was a great dialogue, great information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next item, please.
Action items, citizen participation. Citizens wishing to address the board on agenda and non-agenda items for action who have submitted a blue card to the secretary may speak at this time. The board may not be in a position to respond to non-agenda items. Therefore, speakers should not anticipate an immediate response to their questions or comments. For the benefit of all concerned, do not mention the names of students or college employees. Please limit your times to 3 minutes. We have 2 blue cards. Neither are on action items. The first one is from Kiara Wilson, wishing to address the board on Welcome Center time clock.
Good evening, President Kavahuna, Chair Barry, and members of the board. I want to thank you all for your kind words of gratitude to our members on the SSA. My name is Kiara Wilson. I am the Vice President of Student Services, and I have a statement on behalf of the Executive Board. On February 14, 2020, the SSA staff members in the following departments of the Welcome Center were abruptly notified that they will be required to use the time clock effective March 2nd, 2020. These areas include financial aid, records and registration, student accounts, enrollment services, including call center, lab, concierge, and testing. At the end of the Friday training, all managers from these areas lined up in front of the room and took turns presenting a PowerPoint presentation that vaguely referred to management's need for time clocks, implementation of the new time clock procedures, and discipline should the time clock rules not be followed. At the end of the presentation, the floor was briefly opened up for questions, concerns, and comments. Our issues. The new time clock procedures include disciplinary actions that can negatively impact up until termination of our members. The college has unilaterally changed the working conditions without negotiating with the union. The SSA Executive Board was not consulted nor trained on these procedures and consequences for not following them, which we believe is in a direct violation of our contract under Article 33A. We understand that some people may fall under management rights. However, it undermines the relationship between the SSA leadership and the college. SSA board members are tasked with the responsibility of representing SSA members in disciplinary hearings, and we cannot effectively do that if we are not kept abreast of huge changes like this one. The document that was presented to the SSA members has several bullet points that address disciplinary actions which aren't currently outlined in the SSA CBA. There is little to no history from management of reports, write-ups, or terminations related to chronic tardiness. Time clocks have never been used in the history of SSA except for the facilities department. The SSA has been working with leadership in that area to remove clocks for that group as well, for the same reasons listed here. We have many members who have dedicated 10+ years to the college and are now being asked to use time clocks. Our executive board alone has a combined total of 107 years dedicated to Henry Ford College. Insinuating that our members are no longer trustworthy or professional enough to accurately report their time is degrading. In addition to past practice and years of service, enrollment has been up for the past 2 semesters, and a huge part of that success is due to the work of all SSA employees in these departments. These employees are frontline staff, so their morale directly impacts student enrollment. We believe it is oxymoron to trust these employees with money, social security numbers, tax information, and to manually award financial aid and other classified information and tax, but then to have management say they are not trustworthy enough to report their time accurately, insinuating time theft. I'll allow my board member and secretary of SSA to continue the statement. Thank you.
Is that Leslie Windlass?
Yes.
Oh, so she is going to speak on the same issue.
Okay, thank you, just want to make sure.
Good evening, President Cavaluna. Good evening, Chair Barry and the board. I am basically finishing the statement from my colleague Kiera on the same topic. So we're picking up on number 3 of our issues. We now have more middle management than we've ever had before, but they are not capable of monitoring their staff coming into work without the proper use of a time card per their presentation. It appears that the simple solution is for at least one manager in each area to be present at the time their team is scheduled to come in. There are 6 managers that could oversee the financial aid office of 11 SSA employees. There are 4 managers overseeing records and registration with 9 SSA employees. There are 2 managers that oversee the student accounts office with 6 SSA employees. There are 5 managers, 1 posted position for a testing manager, and 18 SSA employees in the enrollment office. Every department in the Welcome Center is not subject to use the time clock, as it is up to the management to opt in or opt out. We strongly believe this would create a hostile work environment. The culture of the Welcome Center will be negatively impacted, leading to a downward shift in team morale. Employees who are required to clock in may resent other employees that are not required to use the time clock. Management indicated that time clocks are not payroll related, so it should not be an issue for everyone, including middle management, to clock in. Management stated that time clock machines will not replace the current time cards for payroll. No pun intended. Sorry. Payroll, which means the targeted SSA members will now have to keep track of 2 separate time cards. It is a waste of college resources to purchase time clocks and cards weekly for all employees in these areas. We believe those resources would be better used on training and team building for these departments. Employees were asked to punch in and out for meetings that are occurring on campus. This will discourage employees from joining committees on campus and providing service to the college, which are requirements of our yearly evaluation, since the time clock has now been tied to disciplinary action. Management is supposed to support and encourage such participation. In closing, management is responsible for creating and maintaining a healthy work environment. Therefore, they should be expected to lead by example as it relates to being timely and accurately reporting time. We have filed a formal complaint regarding this matter, but as a collective, we feel this matter is worthy of the board's attention and oversight. Thank you for your time and listening to us today on behalf of the Support Staff Association.
Thank you for bringing this concern to us. On behalf of the board, I will ask for some follow-up information from President Cavaluna.
Thank you.
I don't know if you wanted to...
Yeah, sure, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Windlass and Vice President Wilson, good evening. I count you both as friends and colleagues, and I completely respect your right to bring this issue to the board. I have to tell you, I'm a bit surprised. My office did receive a phone call from the president of your collective bargaining unit very recently, and Vice President Best had a conversation with President Kyer today, I understand. So I absolutely, Mr. Chairman, will give the board some feedback on this issue. I have to acknowledge that I am not up to speed on all of this because, candidly, I would prefer to have a conversation with President Kyer. But just a couple things I do want to comment on. Vice President Wilson, I want to just say I agree with you. The enrollments that's been increased at this institution is attributed to many people, including your colleagues that work where you work, and I want you to know I thank you for that. I could hear in your voice that you felt offended by this, and I hope you understand that I'm not really that clear on what the new policy is, but I can tell you that no one that works for this institution in a leadership capacity would intentionally make you feel disrespected. And I hope that comes to be understood by you, whether you like what the decision is or not. I'm sorry you felt that way. Secretary Windlass, I appreciate that you've laid out what you described as some simple solutions. I wrote down some of them, but I absolutely will engage or begin the discussions with the president of your collective bargaining unit and give you feedback on those. I don't think I can do that now, but I have to hope that we can continue this discussion and I think the time you and I have worked together personally, Secretary Windlass, you know that I'll treat you with respect and you'll at least know where you stand with us.
Good night.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, President Cavalluna. Next item, please.
Action to approve action items. Move to approve action items 1 through 8 as recommended in this agenda. I would note that number 8 requires a roll call vote.
Let's pull back a little bit and go over B, Secretary.
Pardon?
Please. Let's go over P. Are there any action items that anybody wanted to pull?
Did I skip something?
You did. Just
Oh, I
B,
did.
it's
Yes,
fine.
you're right.
That's fine, yeah,
Yes,
okay,
sorry.
that's fine.
Are there any action items on this agenda which board members or the president wish to discuss and vote on separately? If there are, we will exclude these from the motion below.
Well, we know 8 does need to be.
Yes,
one.
8. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, moving forward.
Move to approve action items 1 through 7 as recommended in this agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and support. Are there any questions? Any discussion? Trustee Moser?
I have a question about the headsets for the virtual reality, and that's item number 2. Reading the report, it's saying that we only have a single source on this one, and the reason being, and this is obviously, seems to be like a federal grant that we have that is 100% paid for, but I find the pricing to be a little bit excessive for these kind of virtual reality headsets. So is that something in addition that I'm missing? I mean,
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Fred Steiner to approach the podium to address that question. If you, Mr. Chairman, do you want a discussion on this?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Steiner?
It's the original requisition that came through for automotive technology included a consumer-grade version of the Oculus virtual reality set, plus 17 laptops needed to control and operate that particular consumer-grade headset. The problem with the consumer-grade virtual reality headsets is it's easy for those units to be compromised by the end users loading games on and other, non-college programs. What we found as we started to investigate the purchase and working with automotive technology faculty and with the automotive partners, Ford Motor Company, and take a look at my note again here. Ford and Bosch, automotive. They advised us there's a enterprise level headset that's available where the software is much more sophisticated. It eliminates the need for the laptops to try to control, this random addition to the software. And it's the same type of headsets that Ford and Bosch use in their training programs, which they're coming to the college to implement here for our students. So upgrading to the higher end business version of the headset allows us to eliminate the laptops that we have to buy, which would cut off about another $30,000 of the purchase, and actually winds up saving us money going with the higher end headset with no laptops, and the higher end headset gives us much greater security and is compatible then with what our partners in the industry are using.
so the purchase of the headphones is with the addition of that software that comes with it then?
I'm sorry, could you say that?
So we're purchasing not just the headset, but also the software that comes
Yes,
with it?
it includes the enterprise software.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Great, thanks.
Any other questions? We do have a motion and support for action items 1 through 7. Are there any objections? Hearing none, please attach unanimous vote in affirmative, please. Now we'll go to number 8.
Move to approve the Board of Trustees enter into closed session.
Roxanne, you starting trouble over there?
No, it was me.
Oh, okay. Trustee Lane?
I'm sorry, I was just thinking about the headsets beat by Dr. Dre. I just...
Funny meeting tonight.
Okay.
You started it, Dr. Nealon. All right, number 8.
Move to approve Board of Trustees enter into closed session under section. I don't know what's happened. I've got this.
Roll call vote. Trustee Lane?
Okay, yeah, Lane, yes. McDonald? Yes. Mead?
Yes.
Moseb?
Yes.
Petchlikov?
Yes.
Thorpe?
Yes.
Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, may I just read for compliance reasons, read the justification?
Please do.
This is the board is aware of, because they're looking at an agenda that reads the following words, and I think it's a fair assumption that the board has now voted on what they've read, but for the record, what they have read says, move to approve the Board of Trustees entering into a closed session under Section 8E of the Open Meetings Act, which is Michigan Compiled Laws 15.268, to consult with its attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with specific pending litigation matter, that being Jaber versus Henry Ford College et al., which is identified in the Michigan Department of Civil Rights case number 499935. And Mr. Chairman, I believe you called a roll call vote that was unanimous.
Yes, it's always a great thing to have an attorney at the table. Next item, please.
Board of Trustee business, acknowledgement of correspondence.
Anyone? Next item, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
With correspondence, and this was in the minutes from last time, I mentioned that I received an email. After looking at the email, it was a junk email. We had gotten some others that followed up from it. So I mentioned that to Trustee Berry, and I didn't bother forwarding it in that case.
So, thank you. Next item, please.
Board committee reports.
Policy.
Trustee Moseb?
So the policy committee met before this meeting. We reviewed most of, or the work that was done the previous year with the policy committee. We reviewed 2 policies in particular, one that deals with the relationships with other educational institutions and the need for approval by the board for those agreements. So we discussed the language, and we will be presenting that to the board for review next meeting. We also discussed policy 7000, which needs to be removed from the board bylaws as well, as it's becoming obsolete. So we will also be presenting that to the board as well. Toward the end of the meeting, I brought up some policies that we need to discuss going forward. Obviously, the policy committee will be reviewing 2 to 3 different policies that we want to update, and we want to be up to date with all of the policies that we have. So I brought in one policy that we do want to take a look, and I believe the previous committee went at length of the vacancy appointments. So we decided collectively at the committee that we'll be looking at it at the P to 12 and not at the college. And obviously it will mirror both at both institutions. So that was pretty much the entire meeting. Did I miss anything, Mary?
Good. Anybody else? I think that was the only report,
Yeah.
correct? Yes. All right, thank you. Next item, please.
Requests for information and/or future agenda items.
Anyone? Good. President Cavalluna, I know you discussed earlier regarding the strategic planning, which Dr. Mead is going to lead, but regarding the financial stability analysis report, I know we talked about this in December meeting. We also talked about it at the special meeting, but I didn't see it on our reports. I don't want that to be like a side plate for the strategic plan. I want continuous information on that, please, moving forward. Just kind of update where we're at, because I really want to get to that. So I guess that would be request for information. Trustee Lane.
clarification, did you
Yes.
say Dr. Mead is leading that? or-
Dr. Mead, as we discussed in the special meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Mead is going to be leading our discussion moving forward with the strategic planning. We also discussed that it could be part of that work,
But when you're saying lead, isn't it just representing the board?
representing the board. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah,
correct,
that's
okay.
what I'm
Yes,
asking.
yes.
Thank you for
Representing the board.
Thank you.
I guess,
I was going to
I was
say, did he
wondering why-
bite off?
I was wondering why you're sweating over there. Yeah, the administration will leave, but you'll be representing the board, so, yes, thank you. Anything else? Okay, next item, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I may, two comments, one in response to yours. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was under a misapprehension about what you wanted from the administration, so I do have more clarity on it, but I hope you and I can have a discussion about that, and then I can report out to the board what it is on the, I now understand strategic planning that Trustee Mead is working on is a discrete request from the request for financial stability, and I know you and I will work on that, and I can refine that for what I report out as the expectation of the board of me on that second point, and I'm happy to do that. Secondarily, if I may, as public comment, I just want to recognize some of my new colleagues after this board just voted to bring them on as employees, if I may. Huda Mowry, I haven't had a chance to see if any of my new colleagues here are in the audience, but if you are, please stand up. I don't think they are, but if they are, please stand. She's now in the Learning Lab. Gregory Ward is in the he's an energy technology instructor. And Michelle Nichols is a nursing instructor with Dr. Schunkweiler there. And then Dr. Gonko has a new colleague, Eve Chowdhury, and I don't know if I saw her. So, colleagues, if you do see those new individuals, please congratulate them on the board's approval of their joining our team, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Did we go to the next item, commentary? Or?
Board member commentary?
Okay, board member commentary. Trustee Moses?
Yeah, I just would like to say that it was a great meeting, or it was a great outing at the new Trustees Academy at the ACCT conference with President Cavalluna. It was a lot of wealth of information, and meeting also other trustees of community colleges across the country. There was a general session by Gallup representative or a Gallup expert who was talking about employee engagement on college campuses, and the researcher said that employees in higher education are actually 5 times more engaged if they feel they can learn and grow, and that's something that it was a nice takeaway. And they also talked about the close relationships between students and professors at community colleges. And it says that graduates of community colleges are more likely to have professors who care for them. They're also more likely to have mentors by their and say that their coursework actually relates to what they do in the workforce. So that was nice. There was also a general session by John Palisic. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering his last name, but he was the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Labor. And one interesting thing that was a takeaway from his talk, he kept on punting a lot of things to the state level. We're already doing this at the federal level, and the state must address it. And I'm glad that our governor is actually addressing community colleges and putting it at its forefront for Michiganders to achieve their American dream. So he also talked at length about the gap between workforce and employment. And one interesting thing that I saw at the conference, that some actually community colleges, especially the ones that were near DC, brought in students. And that's something that perhaps if there would be a similar conference for ACCT, that we would look into also engaging our students, because I think that was really nice. Those are the things, obviously, with the meeting that President Cavalluna mentioned, that we met with the ambassador of Yemen, and he actually said that when students on scholarships come, I tell them to go to go elsewhere, not in Michigan. So hopefully we change his mind of saying that they would choose Michigan and choose Henry Ford as their destination, especially for those newcomers who need to be in the English Learning Institute. And I talked about ELI for a good few minutes. So hopefully I'll continue doing some of these. I know President Cavalluna is going to go back to DC in March. So hopefully we'll have him meet also with other ambassadors of other countries. And I was frank to the ambassador, telling him that we focus a lot on our own region of attracting students, and we need to now think perhaps outside the box of attracting students even from nationwide. EMU is doing a great job of that, especially with their global tuition, and I believe we need to even be looking into that to see more enrollment worldwide, not just Southeast Michigan.
I'm curious, when you say that he doesn't want to encourage anyone to come to Michigan?
I'll tell you why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was saying because if they come here with the largest Arab American presence, that they would not be learning English. So, which is somewhat the perception, that you would come here, you would feel very comfortable, and you would be speaking your native language. Yeah, and
community.
You get very comfortable. But I told them at Henry Ford, we don't play games. Yeah. Everybody here learns English, and it learns English quickly. So, our ELI program is one of the best in Michigan. So, if not at the country. So
in the planet.
Yeah.
The solar system.
The solar system.
So the ambassador, frankly, I mean, Russ is here. He said, now that I hear about this, and he promised next time when he visits Michigan that he will be also making Henry Ford as a destination to come and perhaps speak. So, and more, even he presented the idea of exchange students that we want to even look into, sending some of our students overseas and also receiving some foreign students to our campus, and making that cultural exchange would be great. I know universities do it all the time. So, and studying abroad is something that a lot of students look into. So that's something that we want to explore with these foreign countries and foundations.
Also, just the support system that we have in this community, I think, would be quite a benefit to students coming.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if he recognized that, or I'm sure that you made that abundantly clear. He said he wants students
to struggle a little bit. So.
Well, yes,
but obviously, if they come here.
We wanted them to have a different experience.
Yeah,
I understand that, but to be successful, I do think you need some basic
absolutely
supports.
Yeah,
so.
And he recognized.
Well, bottom line, it sounds like it was a successful meeting.
Yeah,
it was.
That's
good.
good.
Great meeting.
Appreciate that. Anybody else? Trustee Thorpe?
Even though the P12 side this week is on their midwinter break, sorry for the dual enrollment students that still have to come to the college classes, I wanted to mention before we meet again as a college community, enjoy the spring break for the college, which happens the week before we're scheduled to meet again.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dr. Mead?
I'd just like to recognize Mr. Cavalluna, Esquire, for being appointed to the Aspen Fellowship Program. The emphasis is on transformation of the culture and also on student success. There are at least 1,100 community colleges in the country. This program is for new presidents, and I don't know this data, but I suspect that there are a couple hundred new presidents at least, and there are just 25 selected for this Aspen Fellowship. And so, congratulations to you, sir.
Thanks. Congratulations. Trustee McDonald?
I just want to also acknowledge, it was mentioned earlier that staff and faculty and so many people on campus really give back to the community in different ways. And I know with the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Action, a lot of those events happen in this community. So thank everyone for helping where there's a need and making sure that they are doing things to assist the community. But I also wanted to mention something. I spoke with a student not long ago who had just registered for class. And I asked them, well, how was it? And they said, it's the least painful thing I've done in weeks. And so, knowing this particular student, that's high praise. It honestly is.
Oh, that's nice.
So I wanted to share that story. And I do remember when I was a student, it was very painful. It took hours, and you just planned. So, and I know we are also moving forward, changing the steps to enrollment and everything. So I know there's a lot of even better things that are going forward in that process. So I wanted to share that little story with you, and keep up the good work, and painless is good.
Thank you. We are not adjourned. We are going into closing if anybody wants to stick around until we come back. Thank you.
For us to adjourn.
Mary, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair will entertain a motion to re-enter the open meeting.
Support.
Motion support. Any objections? We are back on the record, and we're just going to go ahead and adjourn the open meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.